Why do the gentlest souls carry the deepest wounds? Kindness looks soft until you see the weight it carries. People with warm hearts often hide their heaviest battles behind quiet smiles. They give more than they receive. They care more than anyone notices, and somehow they suffer in ways the world never sees. You have probably wondered why the kindest people are the ones who end up hurting the most. There must be a reason, something deeper than simply being nice. This is where the truth begins. The room was quiet, filled with a weight that no one else seemed to notice. Early morning light slipped through the cracked blinds, painting long, fragile shadows across the worn floorboards. Outside, the streets were empty, slick with rain, reflecting the gray sky in pools that seemed almost like mirrors. She moved slowly, almost afraid to disturb the silence, noticing the small details that everyone else ignored. A shattered picture frame, the faint scent of forgotten perfume, a coffee gone cold on the table. On the corner, a half-written letter waited, its words trapped between thought and paper, a story never shared. This was the world she knew, a world of quiet tension, of emotions simmering beneath the surface. Kind people are shaped here, in the cracks between love and neglect, in the spaces where attention comes in fragments and care is conditional. They learn to observe, to listen, to feel the currents of emotion that others overlook. Every sigh, every tremor of anger or sadness is noticed and cataloged. They see what others miss. They notice the unspoken. They feel the weight of the world even when it does not touch them directly. And slowly, over time, this acute awareness becomes a habit, a survival skill. Every act of kindness they perform is shaped by these silent observations, by the shadows they have learned to navigate, by the unbalanced world that trained them to see, to feel, and to carry quietly what others leave behind. She arrived at work before anyone else noticed her. The quiet hum of the office her only companion. Her desk was always ready for someone else's mess, her computer filled with reminders for tasks that were not hers. She answered emails that were not meant for her, stayed late to help colleagues finish projects, and yet her own work waited patiently, ignored. At lunch, she ate alone, watching others laugh over conversations she had no part in. People thanked her with fleeting smiles, borrowed her time, her energy, her patience, and then moved on without noticing the lines growing under her eyes or the weight settling in her shoulders. At home, she carried the same pattern, sending messages to check in on friends, offering help she barely had the strength to give, listening to problems she could not solve. And yet, when her own life required attention, when she needed someone to notice that she too was tired, the world moved past her. One morning, a small gesture broke something inside her. She had stayed late to prepare a report for a colleague who promised to acknowledge her work, only to find it discarded, her effort invisible. She did not shout, did not cry, did not confront. She simply sat back, letting the quiet settle like dust over her chest, a whisper of heartbreak that no one would hear. Her kindness, her soft patience had always been her armor, but that day it became her weight. She realized, not with anger, but with a still ache, that giving endlessly without pause had carved out a space where no one saw her at all. And in that silence, she felt both the depth of her own care and the loneliness it had silently created. Every smile she offered, every favor she performed, had shaped her world into one where her presence was assumed, her needs ignored, and her silent suffering invisible to everyone except herself. She walks into the room before anyone notices her presence, not because she wants attention, but because she can feel it. Every small vibration in the air, every subtle shift in tone, every hesitation in someone's smile. It lands on her chest like a weight she has carried for years, a weight she learned to bear before she even understood why. She senses emotions faster than most, reads the invisible currents that others cannot see, and anticipates conflict before it has a chance to arrive. She bends herself, softens her voice, adjusts her expressions, all to keep the world from breaking. People lean on her without realizing it. They pour their fears, frustrations, and disappointments into her open hands, trusting she will catch them. She does, always. But every gift she gives chips away at the self she rarely remembers to nurture. From a young age, her world demanded this of her. She was the quiet caretaker, the one who understood the storm behind a parent's anger, the loneliness behind a sibling's rebellion, the unspoken rules that shaped every day. Saying no was punished, even in the smallest ways. Saying yes was the only path to safety, approval, and fleeting love. She learned to measure her worth not by who she was, but by what she provided. Kindness was no longer a choice. It was survival. Every act of care, every sacrifice, every uncomplaining gesture was written into her bones. And though the world praised her for it, no one saw the cost. Even now, she cannot stop. Her mind is wired to guilt at rest, to tension at pause, to unease at selfishness. Taking a moment for herself feels like betrayal. Sleeping past dawn, refusing a favor, prioritizing her own needs, each feels unnatural, wrong, almost dangerous. Every breath of relief is tainted with a whisper, reminding her that someone, somewhere, will suffer if she stops giving. And yet, she does not lash out. She does not collapse in dramatic gestures. Her suffering is quiet, subtle, invisible. It hides behind calm eyes and a gentle smile, in the pauses between conversations, in the slow movements of her day-to-day life. She gives even as it drains her, because stopping feels like letting the world fall apart. She sees what others miss. She notices the flicker of fear in a friend's glance, the tiny tremor of frustration in a coworker's hands, the faintest shadow of sorrow in a stranger's walk. And she acts because she cannot do otherwise. She forgives when others would abandon. She believes in potential when behavior suggests otherwise. She trusts people who have repeatedly broken trust, hoping, always hoping, that the light in them will grow. Her heart focuses on the could-be, not the is. She holds hope like a fragile candle in the wind, bending over backward to keep it alight, quietly giving herself to maintain it, to feed the world's darkness with her light. And in this, she suffers most. She loves too much, gives too much,
she is a paradox, tender and resilient, giving and drained, present and unseen. She is the gentle soul who carries the deepest wounds. Her empathy is a gift and also a trap. Her love is a blessing and also a burden. Every smile she offers conceals a quiet exhaustion. Every helping hand hides a tiny fracture in her own heart. She is the unseen, the unrecognized, the endlessly giving. And the cruel irony is that her kindness, the very thing that defines her, is also the thing that leaves her hollow. She walks the world softly, quietly, bearing invisible scars, teaching a painful truth. The gentlest souls are also the most burdened. They give endlessly, forgive endlessly, and suffer endlessly. And yet, even in the quiet, the soft, the unseen, there is a strange, resilient beauty in the way they endure, in the way they continue to love, in the fragile radiance of kindness that refuses to die even under the heaviest weight. She never thought of herself as fragile. She thought of herself as steady, reliable, someone who could carry the weight of others without faltering. And yet, one morning, she noticed it, the subtle cracks in her routine, the hesitation in her voice, the fatigue behind her eyes that no one seemed to see. It was not a sudden collapse. There was no dramatic moment, no breaking point announced with sound or fury. It was quiet, almost imperceptible. A coffee forgotten on the counter, a letter never finished, a call unanswered. The world moved on, oblivious, while she carried on under a weight that had been accumulating for years. She realized then that kindness does not shield you, it does not protect, it exposes. It leaves you open, like glass in sunlight. Every favor, every sacrifice, every smile given when her heart was heavy, chipped away at her from the inside. She had been bending herself to fit the needs of everyone around her, believing that giving endlessly would keep the world steady, believing that if she crumbled, everything else would collapse. But the truth was harsher. The world assumed she would not crumble. They assumed soft hearts were easy hearts, that gentleness meant no resistance, that willingness to give meant endless supply. The realization hit her slowly, in fragments: a forgotten birthday, a careless word, a moment of neglect from someone she loved. Each one was small, insignificant on its own, yet together they formed a quiet avalanche she could not stop. She had been taught to endure, to forgive, to overlook, to accommodate, and she had, until there was nothing left to give herself. It was then she understood the secret of her suffering. The kindest people bleed in silence, not because they are weak, but because they carry too much for too long. The weight of others' pain, the constant giving without replenishment, the invisible labor of empathy. It accumulates like water in a hidden chamber, filling until it spills in subtle cracks and quiet exhaustion. She was breaking, but nobody noticed. She was quiet in her unraveling, gentle in her collapse, and the world kept moving, unaware of the storm she had carried alone for years. For the first time, she saw clearly. She was not fragile. She was human.